My name is Karen, and I am 34 years old. I never thought I would be telling this story, but here I am. You know that feeling when you plan a surprise for someone you love and your heart is so full of excitement that you can barely contain yourself? That was me driving home early from San Francisco with flowers in the passenger seat and butterflies in my stomach. I thought I was bringing home joy. Turns out I was bringing home the truth. And sometimes the truth is the heaviest thing you will ever carry. Before I share what happened next, I would love to know where you are watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below and let me know. If this story touches your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel so you never miss another story. Have you ever discovered something you wished you never knew? Stay with me, because what I found in my own bathroom changed everything. 8 years ago, I started my marketing consulting company from absolutely nothing. I remember sitting in my garage with a secondhand laptop, a cup of cold coffee, and a dream that everyone around me thought was crazy. My parents told me to get a stable job. My friends thought I was taking too big of a risk. But something inside me knew that I was meant to build something of my own. I worked 18-hour days for the first 2 years. I took on clients that could barely pay me just to build my portfolio. I learned every aspect of marketing, from social media strategies to brand development, and I poured my entire soul into that business. Fast forward to today, and my little garage operation has transformed into a company with 25 employees and a beautiful office space in downtown Denver. We work with tech startups, established corporations, and everything in between. I built something I am genuinely proud of. Every time I walk into that office and see my team working, I feel this overwhelming sense of accomplishment. But despite my dedication to my career, I always made sure that my family came first. At least I thought I did. My home was my sanctuary. A gorgeous 2-story house in the suburbs of Denver with a wraparound porch, a garden full of roses that I planted myself, and the most beautiful master bathroom you have ever seen. That bathroom was my favorite room in the entire house. It had this massive soaking tub next to a window that overlooked the backyard. After long business trips or stressful weeks, I would light candles, pour myself a glass of wine, and soak in that tub for hours. It was my place of peace, my escape from the chaos of the business world. I never imagined that peaceful place would become the setting of my greatest heartbreak. I met Derek 9 years ago at an art exhibition in downtown Denver. I was there for a client event, and he was there because architecture and art were his 2 great passions. He walked up to me in front of a painting I did not understand and made a joke that actually made me laugh out loud. He was charming in this effortless way, not trying too hard, not showing off, just genuinely warm and interesting. He asked for my number, and I gave it to him without hesitation. That was not like me at all. I was always cautious, with men always guarded. But something about Derek felt safe. We dated for 2 years before he proposed. He did it on a hiking trail in the Rocky Mountains at sunset, with a ring he had designed himself. He was an architect after all, and he said he wanted to build our future together, starting with that ring. I cried so hard I could barely say yes. Our wedding was small but perfect, just close family and friends in a garden ceremony. I remember looking at him at the altar and thinking I had found my person, my forever. Derek worked from home most of the time, which was both a blessing and a challenge. He had a home office on the 2nd floor where he spent hours working on building designs. On weekends, he would cook elaborate breakfasts while I slept in. Pancakes with fresh berries, eggs, Benedict homemade hash browns. He would bring me coffee in bed and kiss my forehead before I even opened my eyes. Those moments made me feel so loved, so cherished. I truly believed I had found the perfect partner. Then there was Megan. We met our freshman year at the University of Colorado. She was my roommate, and from the first day we clicked in a way that felt almost sisterly. We stayed up late talking about our dreams, our fears, our terrible taste in boyfriends. She was there when I went through my first real heartbreak in college. She held me while I cried and told me I deserved so much better. When my grandmother passed away during our junior year, Megan dropped everything to drive me home and stayed with my family for a week. That is the kind of friend she was. Or the kind of friend I thought she was. Megan became an interior designer after college. She was talented with an eye for spaces that I always admired. When Derek and I bought our house, Megan was the obvious choice to help us decorate. She spent countless hours with us, picking out furniture, paint colors, and artwork. She knew every corner of my home, every detail I loved. She knew how much that bathroom meant to me, how I had specifically designed it to be my peaceful retreat. She knew everything. Over the years, Megan became a constant presence in our lives. She would come over for dinners, join us for holidays, and sometimes just stop by to chat when she was in the neighborhood. Derek and Megan got along well, which made me happy. I wanted my husband and my best friend to be comfortable with each other. I never once suspected that their comfort would turn into something else entirely. Our 7th wedding anniversary was approaching, and I had been planning something special for months. I had secretly booked a trip to Hawaii, the honeymoon destination we could not afford when we first got married. I had reserved a suite at a resort on Maui, complete with ocean views and private beach access. I had also been working on a photo album collecting pictures from our entire relationship, from that first art exhibition to our most recent vacation. I wanted to show Derek how much our journey together meant to me. I wanted to celebrate everything we had built. I remember sitting in my office just days before my San Francisco trip looking at that photo album and feeling so incredibly grateful. I had a successful business, a beautiful home, a loving husband, and a best friend who had been with me through everything. My life felt complete. Looking back now, I realize how naive I was. I was living in a carefully constructed illusion, and I had no idea that the two people I trusted most were about to shatter it completely. I did not know that the happiness I felt in that moment was the last pure happiness I would feel for a very long time. The San Francisco trip was supposed to be a quick 5-day visit. I was meeting with a major tech company that wanted to overhaul their entire marketing strategy. This was the kind of contract that could take my company to the next level, so I was completely focused on making it happen. I flew out on a Monday morning, kissing Derek goodbye at the door, and promising to call him every night. The first night I called him around 9 o'clock Pacific time. He answered after several rings, which was unusual, because Derek always had his phone nearby. His voice sounded a bit rushed, distracted somehow. He told me he was in the middle of a complicated design project and needed to finish before the deadline. I understood. I was a workaholic too, so I knew what it was like to be absorbed in something. I told him I loved him, and he said it back. But there was something in his voice that night, something I could not quite identify. I pushed the thought aside and went to bed. The second night, the same thing happened. Derek answered late, spoke quickly, and ended the call after only about 10 minutes. He blamed the project again. By the third night, I started to feel a small seed of worry in my chest. When I called, I heard what sounded like music in the background, like soft jazz. I asked him where he was, and he said he was at home just listening to music while he worked. Something felt off, but I told myself I was being paranoid. Derek had never given me any reason to doubt him. I trusted him completely. During the day between meetings, I texted Megan to check in. We usually exchanged long messages full of gossip jokes and random thoughts. But this time her responses were short and delayed. I sent her a funny meme we would normally laugh about together, and she just replied with a simple emoji. I asked her if she wanted to grab lunch when I got back, and she said she would have to check her schedule. That was strange. Megan and I never needed to check schedules with each other. We just made time. I figured she was busy with a big project of her own. On the fourth night, I could not reach Derek at all. I called 3 times, and each time it went to voicemail. I texted him asking if everything was okay, and he did not respond for 2 hours. When he finally called back, he apologized and said he had fallen asleep early because he was exhausted from work. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But that tiny seed of worry had started to grow roots. Lying in my hotel room that night, I could not sleep. I found myself scrolling through old photos of Derek and me looking for reassurance. I came across pictures from our last anniversary dinner. We looked so happy. Then I scrolled further and found photos from a barbecue we hosted last summer. There was one picture of Derek and Megan standing by the grill laughing about something. They stood close together, and Megan had her hand on his arm. At the time, I had thought nothing of it. They were friends. But now looking at it through the lens of my growing unease, I started to see things differently. I shook my head and put my phone down. I was being ridiculous. Derek and Megan were both important people in my life, and they got along well. That was a good thing. I was letting my stress from the business trip cloud my judgment. I forced myself to close my eyes and think about the surprise I had planned. In just a few days, I would be home and everything would be fine. As I lay there trying to fall asleep, more memories started surfacing. Little moments from the past few months that I had dismissed at the time but now seemed significant. Derek had started going to the gym more often, usually in the evenings when I was working late. He said he wanted to get healthier, and I had encouraged him. But he was gone for longer than a typical workout sometimes, 2 or 3 hours. I never questioned it because I trusted him. Then there were the times Megan would stop by when I was traveling for work. She said she was checking on the progress of our living room redesign, which she had been working on for months. Derek would mention casually that Megan had dropped by, and I always thought it was sweet that she cared about the project so much. Now those visits took on a different meaning in my mind. I remembered one specific evening a few months back. I had come home early from a dinner meeting that got canceled. Derek and Megan were in the kitchen drinking wine and laughing loudly about something. When I walked in, they both went quiet immediately. Megan said she had just stopped by to drop off some fabric samples, and Derek said they were joking about a home improvement show they both watched. I believed them completely. Why would I not? They were two of the most important people in my life. The idea that they would betray me was unthinkable. But lying in that hotel room in San Francisco, I could not stop the questions from forming. Why did they go silent when I walked in? Why was Megan there so often when I was away? Why did Derek seem so distracted every time I called? I told myself I was overthinking everything. I told myself that when I got home, I would see that nothing had changed, that my perfect life was still intact. I told myself I was just stressed about the business deal. On the 5th day, the meetings went better than I could have hoped. We closed the contract, and the tech company was thrilled with our proposal. I should have been ecstatic. Instead, I felt a desperate need to get home. Something was pulling me back to Denver, an instinct I could not explain. I called the airline and changed my flight to leave that afternoon instead of the next morning. I did not tell Derek. I wanted to surprise him for our anniversary, which was just 2 days away. I bought a beautiful bouquet of lilies at the San Francisco airport and picked up a bottle of his favorite red wine. My heart was full of love and anticipation as I boarded that plane. I was going home to my husband, and I could not wait to see his face when he saw me. The flight felt longer than usual. I kept checking my watch, willing the plane to go faster. I imagined walking through our front door and seeing Derek's surprised smile. I pictured us opening the wine together and celebrating the successful contract. I thought about telling him about the Hawaii trip and watching his eyes light up. I had no idea that everything I thought I knew was about to be destroyed. I landed in Denver around 3:30 in the afternoon. The sun was shining, and the autumn air was crisp and clear. I drove home with the windows down, singing along to the radio, feeling genuinely happy for the first time all week. The worry that had plagued me in San Francisco seemed silly now. I was almost home, and soon I would be in Derek's arms. As I turned onto our street, I noticed a car parked in front of our house. It was a silver sedan, and I recognized it immediately. It was Megan's car. My heart did a little skip, but I told myself it made sense. She was probably there to work on the living room design. Maybe she had heard I was coming back and wanted to show me the progress. I felt a small wave of appreciation for my thoughtful friend. I pulled into the driveway and grabbed the flowers and wine from the passenger seat. I walked up to the front door quietly, not wanting to announce my arrival just yet. I wanted to sneak up on Derek and surprise him. The door was unlocked, which was normal for our quiet neighborhood. I pushed it open gently and stepped inside. The house was silent. No television, no music, no sounds of Derek working in his office. Maybe they were in the living room looking at design plans. I set the wine on the entryway table and held the flowers behind my back, a smile on my face, as I prepared to surprise them both. I walked toward the living room, but it was empty. The fabric samples Megan had supposedly been working with were nowhere to be seen. I stood still for a moment listening. Then I heard it, the sound of water running. Not from the kitchen or the downstairs bathroom, but from upstairs. From the master bathroom. My peaceful sanctuary. My first thought was that Derek was taking a shower. But then I heard something else. Laughter. A woman's laughter, soft and intimate. My stomach dropped. My feet felt like they were glued to the floor. I told myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe Megan had used the bathroom and Derek was in his office. Maybe I was hearing things. But deep down in that place where instinct lives, I knew. I knew something was terribly wrong. I forced myself to move. Each step up the stairs felt like walking through thick mud. The laughter continued, followed by the sound of splashing water. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I reached the top of the stairs and walked toward the master bedroom. The door was open. The bathroom door. The door to my favorite room in the entire house was slightly ajar. I pushed it open. Time stopped. The world went silent, except for the ringing in my ears. There they were, Derek and Megan, in my bathtub. The bathtub I had picked out myself, the tub I soaked in after hard days, the tub that was supposed to be my sanctuary. Candles were lit all around the room, the same candles I bought for my own relaxation. A bottle of wine sat on the ledge. They were laughing at something when I opened the door, and their faces froze the instant they saw me. I could not breathe. I could not move. I could not speak. I just stood there holding that ridiculous bouquet of lilies, staring at the two people I loved most in the world as they sat naked in my bathtub. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow, like someone had reached into my chest and squeezed my heart until it stopped beating. Derek was the first to react. He stood up abruptly, water splashing everywhere, his face turning white. He started stammering words tumbling out in a jumbled mess. "This is not what it looks like," Karen let me explain. "It just happened. We did not mean for this." Each word was like another knife in my chest. Megan sat there, frozen, her face red, her eyes unable to meet mine. She grabbed a towel and held it against herself, as if that could somehow make this scene less obscene. I still could not speak. I just stood there taking in every detail. The way the candlelight flickered on the water, the two wine glasses beside the tub, the pile of their clothes on my bathroom floor. This was not a spontaneous moment. This was planned. This was intimate. This was happening in my home, in my sacred space. Probably while I was away on countless business trips thinking everything was fine. Finally, I moved. I bent down slowly and placed the bouquet of flowers on the bathroom floor. I did not throw them. I did not scream. I just set them down gently, almost ceremonially, like I was laying something to rest. Then I turned and walked out of the bathroom. I heard Derek calling my name. Heard his wet footsteps on the tile as he tried to follow me, but I kept walking. Down the stairs, out the front door into my car. I do not remember starting the engine. I do not remember pulling out of the driveway. The next thing I knew, I was parked on the side of a random road somewhere outside of town, and I was crying so hard I could not see straight. The tears came like a flood, carrying with them 7 years of trust, 15 years of friendship, and every dream I had ever had about my future. I sat in that car for what felt like hours, sobbing until I had nothing left. I drove without a destination. The sun was setting, painting the Colorado sky in shades of orange and pink, but I could not appreciate any of it. The beauty of the world felt like a cruel joke. I found myself on the highway heading toward the city without any plan. My phone kept buzzing in my purse. I knew it was Derek, probably Megan too, calling to explain or apologize or make excuses. I did not want to hear any of it. Eventually, I pulled into a hotel parking lot near downtown Denver. It was a nice place, somewhere I had stayed before for business events. I walked to the front desk like a zombie, booked a room, and took the elevator up to the 7th floor. When I got inside the room, I collapsed on the bed fully clothed and stared at the ceiling. My phone kept buzzing. I finally pulled it out and looked at the screen. 23 missed calls from Derek, 17 from Megan. Text messages filled my notifications. I could see snippets without opening them. Karen, please let me explain. I am so sorry. It was a mistake. Please come home so we can talk. Each message made me feel sicker than the last. A mistake. They called 8 months of betrayal a mistake. Wait. I did not know it was 8 months yet. At that moment, I thought maybe it had just started, that perhaps this was an isolated incident. That thought offered no comfort. Whether it was 1 day or 1 year, the betrayal was complete. They had broken something that could never be fixed. I turned off my phone and lay in the darkness. Sleep would not come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them in that bathtub. I saw the candles. I heard the laughter. I smelled the wine. These images played on a loop in my mind, each repetition cutting deeper than the last. I thought about everything I had believed my marriage to be. I thought about the breakfast in bed, the tender kisses, the plans for our anniversary trip. Had any of it been real? Had Derek been thinking about Megan while he held me? Had Megan been laughing at me behind my back while pretending to be my closest friend? Around 3 a.m, I finally got up and went to the bathroom. I looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were swollen and red. My makeup was smeared across my face. I looked broken, and that made me angry. I had built a company from nothing. I had overcome challenges that would have defeated most people. I was strong. I was capable. And yet here I was, falling apart over a man and a woman who did not deserve a single one of my tears. I washed my face and took deep breaths. The tears kept coming, but I was starting to feel something else beneath the sadness. Anger. Not the explosive kind that makes you scream and throw things, but the cold kind. The kind that clears your mind and sharpens your focus. I did not know what I was going to do yet, but I knew that I would not let this destroy me. I had worked too hard to build my life to let anyone burn it down. The next morning, I ordered room service and forced myself to eat. I needed to think clearly, and that meant taking care of myself. I finally turned my phone back on and watched the notifications flood in. Derek had sent dozens more messages throughout the night, each one more desperate than the last. Megan had sent a few too mostly variations of "I am so sorry and please let me explain." I ignored all of them. Instead, I logged into our joint bank account on my laptop. Derek and I had combined finances years ago as a sign of our commitment to each other. Now that commitment seemed like another part of the lie. As I scrolled through the recent transactions, I started noticing things that did not add up. Restaurant charges at upscale places I had never been to, always on dates when I was traveling. A hotel charge from 3 months ago, a boutique hotel downtown, on a night when I was in Chicago for a conference. More charges from florists I had never ordered, from wine shops I had never visited. The cold anger inside me grew colder. This was not a recent affair. This had been going on for months, and Derek had been using our money to wine and dine my best friend behind my back. I kept digging. I accessed our phone records online, something I had never thought to do before. What I found made my stomach turn. Hundreds of calls and text messages between Derek and Megan over the past 8 months. Late-night calls, early morning texts. A pattern of communication that painted a clear picture of an ongoing relationship. I thought I had experienced the worst pain when I walked into that bathroom. I was wrong. This was worse. Knowing that the betrayal was not a moment of weakness, but a calculated, ongoing deception made everything feel more cruel. They had looked me in the eye, both of them, countless times over the past 8 months. They had hugged me, shared meals with me, pretended to love me, all while carrying on behind my back. The depth of their dishonesty was almost incomprehensible. Later that day, my phone rang with a number I did not expect. It was Derek's mother, Patricia. She was a kind woman who had always treated me like a daughter. I almost did not answer, but something made me pick up. Her voice was shaking when she spoke. She told me that Derek had called her in a panic, confessing everything. She said she was devastated and ashamed of her son. Then she said something that made me go cold. She told me that she had suspected something for a while. At the family Christmas gathering last year, she had noticed Derek and Megan standing too close, exchanging glances that seemed too intimate. She had convinced herself she was imagining things because she did not want to believe her son was capable of such a betrayal. I thanked her for calling. I told her that none of this was her fault. But after I hung up, I felt even more alone than before. Other people had seen what I had missed. Other people had noticed the signs while I remained blind. How could I have been so naive? For 3 days, I stayed in that hotel room. I cried until I had no tears left. I barely slept. I ordered room service and picked at food I did not taste. My employees called to congratulate me on the San Francisco deal, and I pretended everything was fine, my voice hollow, even to my own ears. I was going through the motions of existence, while my inner world was in ruins. On the 4th day, something shifted. I woke up early before the sun rose, and I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror again. The swelling around my eyes had gone down. The redness was fading. I did not look broken anymore. I looked exhausted. Yes, but there was something in my eyes that had not been there before. Determination. I thought about everything I had accomplished in my life. I had built a company from nothing. I had overcome skepticism and doubt from everyone around me. I had turned my dreams into reality through hard work and perseverance. If I could do all of that, I could survive this too. More than survive it. I could come out stronger. That morning, I got dressed properly for the first time in days. I put on one of my favorite business outfits, did my makeup, and styled my hair. Looking professional made me feel more like myself again. Then I called the best divorce attorney in Denver. Her name was Sandra Martinez. She was in her early 50s with silver-streaked hair and a reputation for being both compassionate and ruthless. She had handled some of the highest-profile divorces in Colorado, and she came highly recommended by a colleague of mine. When I walked into her office that afternoon, she greeted me with a firm handshake and eyes that said she had seen it all before. I told her everything. The affair, the bathtub, the phone records and bank statements I had discovered. She listened without interrupting, taking notes on a legal pad. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and looked at me with what I can only describe as respectful admiration. She told me I had a strong case. The house was purchased before our marriage with my personal savings. My company was entirely mine-founded before I even met Derek. Colorado law would likely favor me in the division of assets, especially given the clear evidence of his infidelity. She explained the process, the timeline, and what I could expect. Then she asked me what I wanted. I told her I wanted the divorce to be swift and complete. I did not want to drag things out for months or years. I wanted Derek out of my life as cleanly and quickly as possible. Sandra nodded and said she would make it happen. Before I left, she advised me to gather as much evidence as possible to document everything. The phone records and bank statements were a good start, but more evidence would strengthen my position. That evening, I went back to the hotel and started working. I saved screenshots of every suspicious transaction. I downloaded call logs and text records. I created a detailed timeline of Derek's lies. With each piece of evidence I compiled, I felt a little more in control. I was no longer a victim waiting for things to happen to me. I was taking action. The next day, I made another decision. I hired a private investigator. His name was Marcus Cole, a former police detective with 20 years of experience. I explained the situation, and he assured me he could get the evidence I needed. Within a week, he delivered. Photographs of Derek and Megan together at restaurants, at coffee shops, even entering the same hotel where I had found that suspicious charge months ago. Each photo was time-stamped, dated, and documented. The affair was undeniable. While waiting for Marcus to complete his work, I discovered something else that sent me spiraling again. I had left my iPad at home in my rush to leave, and I realized I could access it remotely. When I logged in, I found that Derek was still signed into his messaging app. What I read in those messages made me sick. The conversations between Derek and Megan went back exactly 8 months. But it was not just the affair that devastated me. It was the way they talked about me. They called me naive. They laughed at how clueless I was. Megan had written that I was too obsessed with my work to notice anything, and Derek had agreed. He said I was an easy target because I trusted too easily. They made jokes about how I was funding their dates without knowing it. They mocked the anniversary trip I was planning with Derek, saying he would pretend to be surprised, and then find an excuse to cut it short. Reading those messages was like being stabbed over and over again. These were not two people who had fallen in love despite their circumstances. These were two people who actively deceived me, laughed at my trust, and felt no remorse for the pain they were causing. Whatever lingering doubts I had about divorcing Derek vanished in that moment. He deserved no sympathy, no second chances, nothing but the consequences of his choices. I spent the next few weeks preparing. Sandra filed the divorce papers, and I had them served to Derek at our house, which gave me a small moment of satisfaction. I stayed at the hotel during this time, then found a sleek apartment downtown, where I could start fresh. I had movers go to the house while Derek was out and collect my personal belongings, my clothes, my books, the photos I wanted to keep. I left everything else behind. During this time, I also made some decisions about my professional network. Megan had built much of her interior design business through connections I had made for her over the years. I had introduced her to corporate clients, wealthy homeowners, and influential people in the Denver community. Without actively sabotaging her, I simply stopped being her advocate. When clients asked me about her, I said she was no longer someone I could recommend. I did not explain why. I did not need to. The tone of my voice said enough. Word travels fast in professional circles. Within a few weeks, Megan started losing contracts. Not because I had spread rumors, but because my endorsement had been a significant part of her credibility. Without it, people started looking more closely at her work, her reliability, her character. Some decided to go with other designers. Others simply did not return her calls. 2 weeks after I filed for divorce, Derek showed up at my new apartment. I do not know how he found the address, but there he was standing at my door, looking like a shadow of the man I had married. He had lost weight. His eyes were red and puffy like he had been crying. For a moment, just a moment, I felt a flicker of sympathy. Then I remembered those messages, the ones where he called me an easy target, and the sympathy died. I invited him in only because I did not want to have this conversation in the hallway. He sat on my couch, his hands trembling, and started talking. He apologized over and over. He said it was the biggest mistake of his life. He said he did not know what he was thinking. He said he loved me, and only me, and that Megan meant nothing. He begged me for another chance. He actually got on his knees and begged. I let him finish. Then I spoke calmly without raising my voice. I told him that a mistake is something you do once. What he did was not a mistake. It was a choice he made every single day for 8 months. It was a choice to lie to my face, to use my money, to romance another woman, to mock me behind my back with someone I called my best friend. I told him I had read the messages. I saw his face go pale when I said that. I told him that I was not going to scream or cry or throw things. I was simply going to move on with my life, a life that no longer included him. I handed him a copy of the divorce papers and told him to sign them. He tried to argue, tried to explain, but I was done listening. I told him that if he did not sign voluntarily, the evidence I had would make the court proceedings very uncomfortable for him. He signed. After he left, I sat alone in my apartment for a long time. I expected to feel some kind of release, some sense of closure. Instead, I just felt tired. But beneath the exhaustion, there was something else. A tiny flicker of hope. The worst was over. Now I could begin to rebuild. A few days later, Megan came to see me. I had been expecting this visit. She showed up looking as wrecked as Derek had her designer clothes, wrinkled her hair unwashed. She started crying before she even got through the door, launching into a long explanation about how she never meant for it to happen, how she had always been jealous of my life, how she fell for Derek despite her best intentions. I let her talk. I wanted to hear what she would say, what excuses she would offer. When she finally ran out of words, I responded. I told her that her explanation changed nothing. I told her that she had 15 years to be honest with me, 15 years of friendship that she threw away for an affair with my husband. I told her that the jealousy she admitted to was not my problem, and it certainly was not an excuse for betrayal. Then I told her what I had noticed happening with her business. I explained that I had not actively tried to ruin her reputation, but I had stopped supporting it. The difference might seem subtle, but it was important to me. I was not seeking revenge. I was simply removing myself from her life completely, including all the benefits that came with being my friend. Something changed in Megan's face then. The sorrow turned to anger. She called me petty. She said I was jealous that she and Derek had found real love. She said I had always been more focused on my career than my marriage, and that I drove Derek into her arms. I listened to every word, and I realized I was witnessing the real Megan, the one who had been hiding behind a mask of friendship for years. I asked her to leave. I told her that I never wanted to see her or hear from her again. She stormed out, slamming the door behind her. As the sound echoed through my apartment, I felt something unexpected. Relief. The toxic people were out of my life. Now the real healing could begin. The divorce was finalized within 3 months. Sandra worked her magic, and the court proceedings went exactly as she had predicted. I kept the house, though I decided to sell it. I could not imagine living there after everything that had happened. The bathtub that had once been my sanctuary was now just a reminder of the worst moment of my life. I sold it to a nice young couple who had no idea of its history. I hoped they would create better memories there than I had. Derek left with almost nothing. The court saw the evidence of his affair, the financial infidelity, and ruled in my favor on almost every point. He moved back in with his parents temporarily, a 36-year-old man starting over from scratch. I heard through mutual acquaintances that his reputation in the architecture community had suffered. People talked, stories spread. No one wanted to work with someone known for such a public betrayal. As for Derek and Megan, they did not last. About 3 months after the divorce was finalized, I heard they had broken up. Apparently, once the thrill of the secret affair was gone, they did not have much holding them together. Derek blamed Megan for ruining his marriage. Megan blamed Derek for not being worth it. They turned on each other the way they had once turned on me. There was a certain poetry in that. Megan's business continued to struggle. Several of her major clients dropped her, and she had to downsize her operations significantly. I did not feel joy at her misfortune. I did not feel much of anything about her anymore. She had become irrelevant to my life, a chapter I had closed, and had no intention of revisiting. I threw myself into my work. The San Francisco contract had gone beautifully, and it opened doors to even more opportunities. Within a year of the divorce, I had expanded my company to include a second office in Los Angeles. I hired new team members, took on bigger clients, and grew my business beyond anything I had imagined when I started in that garage years ago. Work became my anchor, the constant I could rely on when everything else felt uncertain. But I also knew that work alone was not enough. I started seeing a therapist, a kind woman named Dr. Patterson, who helped me process everything I had been through. In our sessions, I explored my feelings of betrayal, my anger, my grief, and eventually my hope for the future. She taught me that healing is not a straight line. There would be good days and bad days, progress and setbacks. The goal was not to forget what happened, but to integrate it into my story without letting it define me. I made new friends too. I joined a book club, started hiking on weekends, and reconnected with old college friends I had lost touch with over the years. These new relationships were different from my friendship with Megan. They were built on honesty and mutual respect, without the jealousy and competition that I now realized had always been present with her. I learned to trust again slowly and carefully, choosing people who earn that trust through their actions. A year after the divorce, I stood on the balcony of my new apartment watching the sunset over Denver. The sky was painted in shades of pink and gold, and the mountains in the distance looked like they were glowing. I had just returned from a solo trip to Italy, something I had always wanted to do but never made time for. I spent 2 weeks wandering through Rome, Florence, and Venice, eating amazing food, seeing incredible art, and rediscovering parts of myself I had neglected for too long. I thought about everything that had happened since that day. I came home early from San Francisco. The pain, the anger, the grief, the gradual, painstaking work of putting myself back together. I would not wish that experience on anyone, but I could not deny that it had changed me for the better. I was stronger now, more aware, more protective of my own heart and my own time. I no longer thought about Derek much. He had become a distant memory, a character from a previous chapter of my life. I heard through the grapevine that he was dating someone new, and I genuinely wished him well. Not for his sake, but for mine. Holding on to anger and resentment would only hurt me, not him. I chose to let it go. Meg and I never saw again. Our paths did not cross, and I had no desire to change that. 15 years of friendship had been built on a foundation that turned out to be rotten. Once I saw the truth, there was nothing left to salvage. I grieved that friendship in my own way, and then I moved on. The biggest lesson I learned from all of this was about self-worth. For too long, I had tied my happiness to other people. I believed that a loving husband and a loyal best friend were proof that I was valued, that I mattered. When those relationships turned out to be illusions, I was devastated because I thought I had lost everything that made me worthy. But that was never true. My worth was never determined by Derek or Megan. It was determined by me, by my character, my resilience, my ability to build and rebuild and keep going no matter what. I also learned that trust is a choice, not a given. I had trusted blindly before assuming that the people I loved would never hurt me. Now I know that trust must be earned and maintained. It does not mean being paranoid or suspicious of everyone. It means paying attention. It means honoring my own instincts when something feels wrong. It means understanding that I deserve people in my life who treat my trust as sacred. If you are watching this, and you have been through something similar, I want you to know that you are not alone. Betrayal by the people you love most is one of the most painful experiences a person can endure. But you are stronger than you know. You will survive this. You will heal. And one day you will stand in your own version of that sunset, looking back at everything you overcame, feeling proud of the person you have become. Do not let anyone else define your worth. Do not let someone else's betrayal make you lose faith in yourself. The pain you feel now will not last forever. It will transform. It will become wisdom, strength, and a deeper appreciation for the genuine connections you will build in the future. And sometimes losing someone who does not deserve you is the greatest gift life can give you. It makes room for something better, someone better, or simply a better relationship with yourself. So here I am, 35 years old now, a year older, and infinitely wiser. My company is thriving, my life is full. And that bathtub, that sacred space that was violated, has been replaced by a beautiful clawfoot tub in my new apartment, one that is entirely mine, holding only peaceful memories. The biggest satisfaction I got from this whole experience was not revenge. It was not watching Derek and Megan's lives fall apart. It was discovering that I could face the worst thing I ever imagined and come out the other side not just intact, but better. That is a kind of satisfaction no one can ever take from you. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to rebuild your life after a betrayal? What helped you find your strength again? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one, and I know this community is full of people who support and uplift each other. If this story resonated with you, Please give it a like to help others find it too. Subscribe to this channel so you can be part of future stories, and share this video with someone who might need to hear it today. You never know who might be going through their own storm and could use a reminder that the sun will shine again. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. I am sending you so much love and strength wherever you are. Remember that you are worthy exactly as you are, and never let anyone make you forget it. Until next time, take care of your heart.